inclusive education. There is often confusion around the term inclusive education. Does it mean education for disabled children? Is there a difference between education for all and inclusive education? What does it look like in reality? All children have the right to education. Inclusive education ensures the participation of all students in schooling. It involves restructuring the culture, policies, and practices in school so that they can respond to the diversity of students and their locality. Inclusive education acknowledges that all children can learn, acknowledges and respects differences in children, age, gender, ethnicity, language, disability. The two barriers to inclusive education. Number one, the child is the problem. It includes here the child does not respond, cannot learn, has special needs, needs a special equipment, cannot get to school, is different from other children, needs special environment, and needs special teachers.
So, why should it be my disabled child who misses out just because the class size is too big? So, even when they have a school place, some children are unable to learn, as well as others because the education they receive is irrelevant or discriminatory. Like for example, minority ethnic children may be turned away from class because of their identity, or they may sit through years of schooling not understanding the language of instruction. So girls might be sexually abused by teachers, or children of families displaced by conflict may be unwelcome in their host community and schools. So inclusion often happens when school and education system reflect the prejudices and discrimination found in wider society. Consequently, the most marginalized children remain invisible to the education system. So, and just as they are invisible within society, they do not figure when the effectiveness of education is measured.
What are the main steps involved in building an inclusive education system? There is a wide body of evidence illustrating what works at classroom, school, and community levels to promote inclusive education. An inclusive school or education system does not need a fixed set of characteristics, nor does it need to develop following set of formula. However, it is clear that those involved in running education need to take the principle behind inclusive education seriously and decided how best to work towards them in their context. Another reason why people within education may make little progress towards inclusive education is that they don't know what changes would make the biggest difference. Unable to provide resources in response to newly identified needs, and flexible, transparent funding should be available at grassroots level. Thus, running an education system should consult marginalized children and other stakeholders in order to identify the barriers to education which particularly groups experience, discuss improvements that can be made.
One way to bring marginalized groups of children into education is through targeted initiatives to make possible for them to go to school. Examples are included scholarships, social protection schemes, local campaigns to raise community awareness that all children can and should go to school, negotiation and legal action aimed at employers to give working children time and support to access schooling. As well as boosting access, it is crucial to look at what happens inside the school. In reality, The way teachers' curricula and school rules operate often deters certain groups of children from staying in education. To combat inflexibility and discriminatory attitudes in schools, targeted approaches are likely to be needed as a short-term measure. The case studies in this chapter describe approaches that aim to improve education for children who are marginalized or excluded from the education system because of first, language, second is disability, third is gender, fourth is ethnicity, and fifth is the conflict. At the same time as working on targeted initiatives, it is important that programs address the policy and resource barriers that contribute to children exclusion. Without this, there is a risk of working to make the child fit the school or developing detailed project approaches for children with particular needs that are not appropriate for the wider education system. Language barriers in recent years, many Save the Children education programs have increasingly focused on the issue of minority ethnic children who struggle with school because they do not speak the language used in class. This often happens in remote, rural, often mountainous settings where the most marginalized ethnic groups tend to live. There are various causes of the linguistic barriers that minority ethnic groups face, most of which stem from an inappropriate policy framework or discriminatory assumptions underlying the way in which schools and teachers are managed. Sometimes the teacher speaks the same language as the children, but has been instructed not to use that language in favor of the official language of instruction. In such cases, there are usually no local language learning materials available. Teachers may spend a great deal of time translating materials into local language, thus slowing down the learning process. This is often the case in West and Southern Africa, for example, where former colonial languages are used as the official language of instruction. Bangladesh, for example, teachers often turn away minority children because they cannot speak Bangla. Dropout rates from school for children without Bangla as a first language are double the national rate, which is 60% as opposed to 30%. Ethnic students complete a full education and become teachers because it is difficult for them to learn and pass exams in the minority. The teacher allocation system also means that teachers from another language are grouped, often posted to remote highland areas, even when they do not know the local language. Local and national education officials tend to do local languages.